I'm being a little schizophrenic here this morning, not literally, but metaphorically, in that, on the one hand, I am arguing that the United States is oil independent. By the way, that moment of oil independence, and this, I didn't include this in my article because it just would have made it so much longer, but I was tempted. That moment of oil independence happened in 2019, and Donald Trump called a press conference and said, we're now oil independent. We don't need oil from anybody in the world. And it happened when I was president. And he was right. He was right. But, you know, at that point, we were already exporting oil, millions of barrels of oil every single day. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, when he was planning his trip to Saudi Arabia a few months ago, they thought that they had a deal with Prince Mohammed bin Salman to cut oil production, or to increase oil production, to cut oil prices around the world. Did you see this piece in today's New York Times? The headline, U.S. officials had a secret deal with the Saudis, or so they thought. His top aides thought they had struck a secret deal to boost oil production through the end of the year, an arrangement that would help justify breaking a campaign pledge to shun the kingdom and its crown prince. But he punked us. He punked our president. The dictator of Saudi Arabia punked our president. In fact, the phrase in the New York Times article, the administration officials have been left fuming. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman duped the administration. Administration officials said that even days before the OPEC Plus decision, they had received assurances from the Crown Prince that there would be no production cuts. Yeah, everything's good. We got this for you guys. So on the one hand, I'm saying, hey, we need to lower the cost of fossil fuels in the United States. For transition purposes. On the other hand, there is this startling story suggesting that this is from the United Nations. The COP 20, whatever it is, 27 meeting is coming up in a few weeks. And they just released a report this morning. This is from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. And they pointed out that the United States and most other countries are not on track to hit this modest targets that we have. And global carbon emissions are projected to rise by 10.6% by 2030. That's 8 years from now. 7, really. And the planet is set to warm to by an average of 2.9 degrees Celsius by 2100. Jamie Henn, the director of Fossil Free Media, says on Twitter, he says, the latest UN report is just another reminder that we are still throwing cups of water at a raging inferno. It's past time to declare a climate emergency and use every power Biden has to get us off fossil fuels. And I am completely agreeing with that. This is just incredible what we need to be doing. We need to, stop fossil fuels from being a political weapon in the United States, because it's a political weapon that is working to the advantage of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party does not want to do anything about climate change. They're climate deniers. So even though I'm saying keep American oil in the United States to lower the price of gasoline, I'm saying that because that will help the Democrats hold political power and do something about climate change, which will ultimately get us off our addiction to gasoline and oil. I mean, you've got, Louise and I used to live in the Northeast. We lived in New Hampshire for 5 years. We lived in Vermont for 10 years. And, everybody heats with oil up there because that's what was available in the late 1800s. All those forests in the Northeast, they're all just 100 to 150 years old. They're all relatively young trees in straight lines because all of the Northeast was cut. All the trees were cut back in throughout the 1700s and the early 1800s for firewood, for heating wood. And then in the 1860s, 1870s, as the railroads made their way up there, suddenly everybody converted to coal. And then as John Rockefeller really got into the business in the 1880s, 1890s, by 1900, everybody was converting their houses from coal to oil. And they're still burning oil in the Northeast. The rest of the country does, electricity and natural gas because the heating systems were developed later. We could make that conversion from oil straight to solar. One of my best friends lives in Vermont, off the grid with 100% solar power, has for years. It's doable. We can do this. But it's going to take political will, and the Republican Party has none of that, and they're using oil as a weapon right now, a political weapon. And the Democratic Party does have plans to do this. So, forgive the mixed message here, but it's a mixed message with an intent, which is that we need to become energy independent. We need to disconnect ourselves from the world's energy prices. We need to use our own fossil fuels here in order to get ourselves off fossil fuels.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Oh, and here's the latest from Herschel Walker. Gloria Allred, in the third hour of our program, will be holding a press conference. A new woman that Herschel drove to the abortion clinic.